Hello, future nurses. It's Johnny here, and welcome to your lesson on the meaning of prefixes. First, let's take a look at the definition of prefixes. It's a review from our prior lesson. As a reminder, prefixes are affixes that go before the root word to change or alter its meaning. For instance, adding the prefix pre to the word game creates the word pregame, meaning before the game. Therefore, pre means before. Now, in prefix type questions on the TEAS exam, they're going to ask you questions in two different ways. They're going to ask some questions without any context at all. They're just going to simply ask, what is the meaning of this following prefix? And you'll be expected to answer. However, in some questions, they're going to give you additional context. That could be in the form of a sentence, phrase, or word using our target prefix. We'll take a look at examples and strategies for each type of question. So let's dig deeper with our first sample. In our first question, we're going to look at a question with no context clues. In this question, they ask the following. Which of the following is the meaning of the prefix micro? A, across, B, small, C, middle, or D, one, singular. Now, there are two ways to approach this question. Number one is obviously if you know what micro means, you can plug in the answer and move on to the next one. Now, that takes some study and memorization. But don't worry, we've added flashcards and other study skills to help you memorize on our blog. Second option is to plug this prefix into words you're already familiar with. In this case, you would look at any other word that you know that contains that prefix micro. That could be the word microorganism or microscope. What you would want to do is extract that prefix micro. Think about what the relationship between a regular organism and a microorganism is to determine the meaning of that prefix micro. But with both of these strategies in mind, let's take a look at our answer options. First answer was A, across. Now the prefix for across is trans, like in the word transport or transportation. It means to carry something across. Answer option B is small. The prefix for small is micro, and that's our correct answer. If you got it, good job. Answer option for C is middle. The prefix for middle is the prefix meso, like in the word mesoderm, which refers to the middle germ layer of skin. And our last option is one or singular. Now that's a prefix for mono, like in the word monotone, which means sounding exactly the same. So for instance, if I only talked like this with one tone, that would be monotone. Now let's take a look at our second sample question. This time we're given context clues in the form of a sentence. Let's read it together. He walked 1 kilometer until he found a gas station. Here's our question for this. Which of the following phrases defines the word kilometer based on the meaning of the prefix kilo? Is it A, 1/10 of a meter, B, 10 meters, C, 1,000 meters, or D, 100 meters? Now first, we're given an excellent view of just how root words and prefixes interact to form new words. For kilometer, meter is our root word. Kilo, our prefix, is added to the beginning, and that forms our word kilometer. Also, in this question, we're given the sentence, he walked 1 kilometer until he found a gas station, which reassures us that we're looking for a distance here. Now also, if we were really stuck, but we understood the metric system, we could use deductive reasoning to really cross off that 1/10 of a meter. 1/10 of a meter is a small step or a centimeter, and that would not be a walk to a gas station. Nonetheless, let's continue and take a look at our answer options and analysis. A, as we said before, is a centimeter. A centimeter is 1/10 of a meter. Centi is a prefix that means 1/10. B, 10 meters is a decameter. Deca is a prefix that means 10. That'd be a few steps. C, 1,000 meters is a kilometer. Kilo is a prefix that means 1,000, and this is our correct answer. If you got that one, great work. Finally, D, 100 meters is a hectometer. Hecto is a prefix that means 100. If you ever ran track and field, Hectometer is that straightaway on the track and field. Now, there are really two ways to prepare and study for prefix type questions on the TEAS exam. Option number one is to study and memorize the prefixes. We have put a helpful list and flashcards as an attachment to this lesson to help you study and memorize. This is going to be supremely helpful because if you recognize it, you can simply just define it and move on. It's going to be your most cost effective and time effective. And it's going to be most helpful in questions without those context clues. Option number two is plugging the prefix into words that you may already be familiar with. As an example, if you're asked to define the prefix inter, you can place it in a word you're familiar with, like interact or interpret. Let's take a look at that word interact. To act is to take action or do something. If you're acting on a stage, you're taking action or doing something on that stage. Interact is when you are talking with others. Therefore, inter means with others. By using a combination of these two strategies, we're able to tackle prefix questions. So let's take a look at a couple more examples. Now, let's first try one without context clues. Which of the following is the meaning of the prefix mortis? Is it A, round, B, single or alone, C, death, or D, life? Now, without context clues, we may either study and memorize this term, or we may plug it into words we may know, like a mortician. Let's take a look at our answer options. For A, round, the prefix for round is circumference, like the distance around a circle is the circumference of that circle. That's not our correct answer. The prefix for single or alone, option B, is mono. If you're monolingual, then you only know one language. C is death. The prefix for death is mortis. That is the correct answer. A mortician is somebody that works with dead bodies. Finally, D, the prefix for life is bio, as in biology, which is the study of life. Let's take another look at another one without context clues. The question is, which of the following is the meaning of the prefix auto? A, self, B, before, C, alike, or D, against opposite. Now, my thought process in this question here is to use that word and plug it into one that I already know. I think of an automatic car, one that simply just goes from park to reverse to neutral to drive. Now, I have some friends that drive manuals, and they do a lot of work while they're driving, while I simply shift into drive. That's an automatic car. I think of that as something that works on itself. So let's take a look at our answer options. A, the prefix for self is auto. That's the correct answer, as in the automatic car, or an autonomous robot, one that works on its own. B, the prefix for before is pre, like a pretest, an assessment you take before the test to practice. C, the prefix for like is homo, like homogeneous, which means having all the same characteristics. And finally, D, against opposite, the prefix for that is contra or contro, depending on the word, like contradict or controversy, which means to say something that's the opposite. So in our third sample question, instead of looking for the definition of the prefix, we're instead looking for the meaning of the word that contains that prefix. Let's read the question and find out a little more. Based on the meaning of the prefix a or an, what is the meaning of the word amoral? Is it A, before morals, B, between morals, C, with morals, or D, without or lacking morals? So how do you approach this question? If you look, each of the answer options contains that word morals. So we can knock that out immediately. Instead, we're going to focus on those words before morals. So that would be A, before, B, between, C, with, or D, without or lacking. And at this point, we are simply just looking at that prefix again of A or an. Now, of course, using our two strategies, if we've already memorized these prefixes and know the prefix for a or an in that definition, we can simply plug that in and move forward. But if not, we may need to supply ourselves with some words that we know that feature that prefix of a or an. For instance, anemic works. Also, a word like atheist. So let's move on and we'll dive into our answer options. Again, here's our question. Based on the meaning of the prefix a or an, what is the meaning of the word amoral? Our first option was A, before morals. Now, the prefix that means before is anti or pre. So words that mean before morals would be anti-moral or pre-moral. These aren't commonly utilized English terms, so we'll move on. B, between morals. The prefix that means between is inter. For instance, interact. There's no real word for intermorals or intermorality, so let's move on from there. C, with morals. Now, with morals is simply just morals or morality. There's no real word to say something with morals. Something with morals is simply just having morals. So it doesn't change our definition. Finally, without or lacking morals. The prefixes a or an mean without. So somebody without morals is amoral. This is our correct answer. If you got it, great work. So our practice question number 4 has context clues. In this one, we're looking for the definition of a prefix using this sentence. We got a sneak preview of the show on Thursday. It looks riveting. Which of the following defines the prefix pre based on the meaning of the word preview? Is it A, after, B, before, C, a summary of, or D, down, off, away from? So here, of course, if you have your definition of pre, simply just plug that in and move forward. But in this one, the sentence also gives us a lot of great information here. We got a sneak preview of the show on Thursday. If something is a sneak and a sneak preview, we think of something that might have happened perhaps before the show's release date. Because you wouldn't get a sneak review. Nobody's going to be like, hey, come here, I want to show you my review before it comes out. That often doesn't happen. So sometimes you can actually use a sentence to help understand the question. Let's move on to our answers and see if that works out. We got a sneak preview of the show on Thursday. It looks riveting. Here is our question. We're looking for the meaning of the prefix pre based on the meaning of the word for preview. First option was A, or after. The prefix for after is post, like a postseason, or a post view. We would look at that as a review in most English terms, which happens after the season's over or after the show is over, after we've already experienced something. That's the opposite of our answer. So let's move forward. B is before. The prefix for before is pre, like the word prefix, like the word preview. This is our correct answer. If you got it, nice going. C, a summary of. The prefix for a summary of is over, like overview, kind of like how this lesson is an overview of looking at prefixes, meaning taking a quick look of an entire story, plot line, or in this case, test prep. Finally, down, off, away from. That is the prefix for D, like devalue, meaning to take away or bring down the value of. So here you can see our strategy of taking a look at that sentence really did play out for us. Let's move on. All right, so let's take a look at practice question number 5. This time, again, we're given context clues in the form of a sentence. Robert was worried about the abnormal bump on his arm. So Robert sees a bump. It looks abnormal. He's worried about it. The key words there are worried and abnormal there. We can kind of picture this sentence kind of coming out in front of us. Which of the following defines the prefix ab based on the meaning of the word abnormal? A, beyond, past, or by. B, apart or away from. C, life, or D, put into or cover with. Okay, so if we already understand the word normal is something that regularly happens, right? We're not going to put something into life or cover it up with life, so we can easily just cross off D there. Normal with life, that's not something we're going to necessarily be worried about with a bump on our arm, so we can cross that one off as well. That leaves us with 2 real answers here. A, beyond, past, or by. Like, hey, this bump is beyond normal. It's past normal. Should probably go check this out, see if it's a broken bone. Or B, apart or away from normal. That, yeah, this looks apart from normal. Like this is abnormal. It's not something that should be happening here because we're worried about it. So by reading the sentence on this one, we're able to cross off and use process of elimination on 2 of our answers, which now gives us a much better chance of getting this question correct. Now from there, if we understand the prefix AB from our flashcards or from our studying guides, we can simply just choose the right one and move on. If not, we might be able to look at some other words that we can put that prefix into. But nonetheless, let's look over our answer options again. There's our sentence and our question. Let's look at our first option, beyond, past, or by. Beyond, past, or by is the definition of the prefix for para, as in the word paranormal, which means something that goes beyond understanding. So that's where the difference between beyond and outside of kind of come in. Paranormal would be like almost like a ghost story that we'd see close to Halloween or scary film. Be apart or away from, that's the definition of our prefix AB, and that's our correct answer. You got that one? Great job. C, life. Life is a definition of the prefix for bio, like in the word biography, a story of somebody's life. Graphy meaning writing or story. Finally, D, put into or cover with. That is the definition for EN, N, like enclose, meaning to put something in a casing or enclosure. Like enclose is a letter if you're opening up a package. Finally, we have our last practice question of this lesson. This time, we're also given a sentence. The organism can't be seen by the naked eye, measuring at less than 7 microns in length. Which of the following defines the word micron, based on the meaning of the prefix micro? Is it A, a large unit of measure, B, a small unit of measure, C, a single unit of measure, or D, length of measure? Now here again, we're able to use this sentence to really help us out here. The organism can't be seen by the naked eye. That means if it's on a table in front of me and I look down at it, I'm not going to be able to see it no matter how close I get to my table. That means, by nature, it's not large, because if it's large, we'd be able to see it with our own eye. That means we need something to look at, like with a microscope. So we know that that unit is small. So we can instantly just simply cross off A, large unit of measure there. And that leaves us with those 3 options. Now, of course, we could use, if we knew prefix micro, microscope, something that makes small things really, really large, we could really use our deductive reasoning to come to this question and come to the answer. So let's move on to our answer options on this one. There is our sentence and our question again. A is a large unit of measure. We already crossed one off with our process of elimination, but it's the definition of the prefix for macro. Like as in macromolecules, that would be a massive molecule. It's not a word that's used standard in any English language. Most likely it's used with macroeconomics or even macro photography, which is making small things seem really, really large. B, a small unit of measure. Small is a definition of the prefix micro, and that's our correct answer. C, a single unit of measure. Single is a definition of the prefix for mono, like in monochromatic, that would be like a black and white photo, something that's only one color. And finally, D, length of measure. There are no prefixes for the word length. It would more just be like a meter or an actual unit of measure. So B is our correct answer. And if you got that one, good for you. You should give yourself a round of applause. So let's review a little bit on prefixes. Again, prefixes they're affixes, which means they go before or after root words. In this case, it's pre, which is the prefix for before. So it's going at the beginning of root word. And that changes and alters our meaning. 2, you definitely want to study and memorize these. If you study and memorize them, it's going to be your most time-effective measure. You're simply able to just choose your answer and move on. And don't worry, we have flashcards and other study guides attached to this lesson to help you out. Finally, 3, which is probably the most creative use, is to definitely use your context clues. Plug that prefix into words you were already familiar with. So if you have that micro, and that's your prefix, take a look at words like microscope and see how they connect. Inter, look at the word like interact or interscope to take a look at how separate that prefix. What is the definition based on this word you already know? And finally, use sentence and word examples to really help you out. For instance, that sentence with micron said it wasn't visible by the human eye, so we just knew it had to be small. So there we have it. There are our prefix strategies for the TEAS exam. I hope this is really helpful for you. Remember to look at the attachments and look at the blog for updates on prefix type questions. Thank you for using NurseHub. This has been Johnny, and I'll see you next time. Amazing work today. You worked really hard at that one. Now, don't forget to take your practice quizzes and all the other unbelievable resources we have here at NurseHub, and I'll see you soon.